Now then, something a bit different today. Firstly, apologies for no video on Thursday or Sunday. Just was feeling a bit drained. I'd played quite a bit this season, and there was no real decks I particularly wanted to like show off or anything. I was playing mostly meta stuff, because I've been sitting in the top 200 for like most of the season, and then things just fallen apart. It's not really worked out. Probably going to finish about 250th or something, but it's not a competitive season. It kind of doesn't matter. Um, and I'm just kind of waiting for the new patch. I Until the new season hits, I don't really have a need to play the game, and I'm currently playing a Witcher 3 Deathmatch run, and I'm completely engrossed in that, so that's taking like most of my time. But our boy Zube has posted the patch leaks, so we'll have a look at those. I did give these a quick scan through and stuff, and I really like a lot of this. Really, really like a lot of this. Um, as always, the ones that I think are kind of unimpactful will just skim past. The ones that I think there's more to talk about, we'll spend a bit of time on. And any cards that aren't very common, I'll, say what they are. So, like Alchemist, for example. So, coup for 10 provisions instead of 9. Really like this. I think it's completely fair because coup's it's a good card. We've seen it kind of gets run in pretty much every archetype of Nilfgaard just because there's so much value in it. With assimilate, the ability to steal something from your opponent, to because imprisonment can deal 3 damage basically at any point. You can hit something like an Ethne, for example, hit it down to 3, hit it with a coup, you get your own, it triggers assimilate, it spawns 2 dryads. It's really good. And even if you don't get that kind of pull, it allows you to do double Joachim, it allows you to copy even things like Informant, Cantarella, Roderick. It's just a very solid card. And it's kind of shown because it's played in pretty much every archetype. So I think 10 provisions is completely fair. Illusionist, 4 power from 3. So that's one of the new cards. The create a 1 power copy of a card in your opponent's graveyard, or if it's bonded, you don't set it to 1. You just do a base copy. I think this is fair enough. It's not really seen much play because it has there's some interesting things you could do, but most of the time it's a little underwhelming. So I think that's fair enough. Crossbowman, which has been out of the meta for a little while now. That is the deal 2 damage, and when you play a soldier, it'll ping 1 damage. And it's kind of nice. I've always really liked Nilfgaard soldiers. It's pretty fun archetype. It's not amazing, but Imperial formation, you can get its armor up to 4. It's kind of hard to remove, gives you a good engine, and an increase in power is always nice. Alchemist, as Zube said, not the toxic one. This is the 4 provision one that swaps the power of 2 of your units. 5 power from 4. Don't think it's too relevant because the card's basically a meme. Enduric Queen, 6 power from 5 and 6 provision from 7. Really nice. It's quite a bit of a power shift. Uh, Moving it down makes it more of a good tech inclusion. But yeah, it's reasonable. It's reasonable. Old Spear Tip, 11 from 12. I think it's still overcosted. It's just there's too many cards in this kind of position, in terms of like provision cost, that are actually doing something. Whereas Old Spear Tip is just points, just slam points on the board. And there's just better cards in that sort of area. Why would you run an Old Spear Tip when you could run something like an Oberon, an Unseen Elder, a Koshi, Mamuna, uh, Bloody Mistress, those kind of things. You don't really. There's better point slams than a card that's designed to be a point slam. So yeah, I think Gold Spear Tip is just kind of surplus to requirements, but we'll see. Drowner, 4 provision from 5, I think is solid because at 5 it's just really not getting value. It's a 2 power thrive that deals 2 damage. That's really not doing a great deal. You compare this to like something like Endrega Lava, for example. and it just doesn't even come close. So I think 4 provisions is completely fair. Detlef, 6 power instead of 5. Yeah, I agree on this. I like this because I think Deathwish kind of needs something, and it looks like they're addressing that a little bit with Mamoon also getting a buff. Because Detlef's just been power crept, so I think 6 power is fine. You know, if with the investment of consumes, it goes from being 15 points to being 18 points, so it's a pretty nice buff. But obviously, it's not just a 18 points for what is it, 10 or 11 provisions, because you have to invest consumes and things like that. But I like it. I like it as a change. Goliath, 7 provision from 10. Same thing as Detlef, and even old Spear Tip, it's just a point slam, a 10 point slam. I mean, sure, you can, if you want to try Monster Mill, the truly cursed archetype, Goliath's good for that, but yeah, at the moment, I think he's just been power crap. There's just better stuff. Osroll 8 from 9, really nice. The again an Osroll kind of package had become very expensive when you compare it to other things. So I like that as a change. And he was already pretty solid at 9 provisions. It wasn't like he wasn't seeing any play. Um, I don't know if all of these changes for monsters will make them relevant again. I would lean towards no. I think we won't see much monsters next season either. Maybe at the start people will be trying Death Wish, but yeah, I think they're still in a bad spot. And Maruna, 6 power from 5, kind of whatever, to be honest. A buff's a buff, but I don't think it's going to do too much. Now, for Northern Realms, we've got quite a few changes. Buffs to some stuff, and in some of the stuff I was kind of talking about. So Visigood, 6 power from 5, and has 2 armor. And that's fair enough. I think Visigood was really killed by removing formation. It pretty much killed this card because it went from just being a solid payoff for boosts to all of a sudden a very easily removed target because you slam down a 5, something like an Owl's Slender pings it away and it loses its value. But 6 power and 2 armor, arguably good now. Arguably pretty good in a more traditional NR kind of style. Not the Siege kind of list, more of like a Uprising, Shield Wall kind of list. Very, very decent. So Thala, 7 points, 7 provision from 6 power and 8. I could be getting this wrong, but it's you and your opponent draw a card, if I remember, something like that. But I mean, the reason I can't remember is because the card doesn't have that much value, not that amazing. So I don't think it's going to be enough to make him relevant. It's similar to like the Durdrick change, where they kind of change the tech card to actually play for some value, but yeah, I don't think it's enough. Siege Master, now 3 points, 4 provision. The card really isn't that great. It is the one that like synergizes with warfares and things like that. Not that good. Redanian Knight, 2 power from 1. Reasonable, it's not enough. This is the 4 provision card that every turn it's on the range row, it gains a point, and as soon as it has its armor removed, it damages the tallest enemy unit by 2. The problem is it's just too slow for a very minor payoff. When you can get 4 provision bronzes to play for 7 points just on deploy, having a card that needs to stick for, I mean, now it's like, what, 5 turns just to get that value is kind of nuts. It's just really not that good. You compare it to something like Nausicaa Sergeant, which isn't even played anymore by Nilfgaard, and this is just kind of a bit of a joke. Wyndham of Atra, this is the one that every turn has a shield, boosts itself by 2. This is a card that like I think works well in Shield Wall. Like genuinely is pretty decent in Shield Wall. I did run this a little bit in Shield Wall just because it's like your opponent has to invest some form of damage or hard removal, which will play for, in theory, 0 points because it has to kill a shield just to turn off an engine, which is super, super valuable. Especially against decks that don't have pings, so against something like Scoia'tael, for example, unless they're running Precision Strike, they don't really have a way of dealing one damage super efficiently. So I think that's reasonable. I think the card was already okay for Shield Wall, but an increase of 1 power, you're not gonna turn your nose about. Now, these are the two. These are the two that I'm super happy about. So this is the one I was talking about. Aretusa Adept is basically the problem with Meditating Mages. Being able to spam out tons of them, drop to 3 power, super nice to see. They did need a change. I don't know if this is enough. Really don't know if this is enough. But we'll see. I mean, honestly, they could have changed the what I personally think should be done with mages, which can counteract the sort of spam spawning tons kind of thing, is make it so the resilience is part of the deploy. So then that means any that are spawned by, something like not Alza, sorry, Idoran, or like Chapter of Wizards or Megascopes, things like that. They generate the bodies, they just don't give you the carryover potential. I think it would probably kill the card, but I mean, in all honesty, I think that's kind of what I want is to kill it off. But back to the Aretusa Adept, I think this is definitely a nice change. Whether it'll be enough, I don't know. But this is the problem with the deck: the Aretusa Adepts, not the Meditating Mages themselves. The carryover is annoying, but it's not game breaking. What is game breaking is being able to get all of these patience units set up for your next turn and play the adepts, and they just go off. I mean, honestly, the change I personally wanted to see, and the one that I kind of spoke about, was instead of Aretusa Adept boosting itself every time patience is triggered, if it just boosted itself the first time patience is triggered. Something like, I forget the name of it. It's Salamandra. Is it Salamandra Lackey or Syndicate? Which it gains a point the first time you gain a coin. If Aretusa Adept to work like that, perfectly fine card. It's still a 4 provision, 1 point a turn engine that plays for 4, really solid, really easy to get going with your other patience cards. But as it stands now, it's basically a 4 provision Colgrim, and at 5 provisions, I think it's still very playable. So I don't know if this is enough, but at least something's being done about it, which it is what it is. So Venom Roach Disloyal, this is the one that plays 2 golds from your deck. I mean, the card's bad just because it's too inconsistent. So, I mean, I guess it did need a provision drop, but I don't think it's anywhere near enough. I honestly don't think I'd play a Venom Roach even if he was like 8 provisions, so I don't think that's good enough. Now on to Syndicate, which we haven't seen a great deal of on ladder. Mutated Hound got point increase. This is the poison or bleeding one, depending on the row you put it. Unsure if the armor's been removed or kept still. I think either way, the kind of benefit that Syndicate has and the reason why it's the only faction that's still kind of holding on to poisons as a removal is because they're so cheap. You just put them in the 4 provision slot. Every deck needs 4 provision cards. So you just slam in 4 poisons at the 4 provision slot and job done. That's your toll removal dealt with. The problem with Mutated Hound is you're now having to play a 5 provision card, which feels kind of gross because it's provisions you could be using elsewhere. Why would you use Mutated Hound when you can just put Fizz Tech in, for example? So I think it's more there's better options available rather than the card is objectively bad kind of situation. Now our Binsey. This is a card that I kind of like, and the drop from 10 provisions to 9 provisions is pretty nice. It's an interesting card because it represents a must kill kind of engine. And at 10 provisions, it was kind of too much. I think the problem you face when you're building decks for Syndicate is there is too many. I mean, I can't believe I'm complaining about this, but there's too many top end cards that are just too good not to run. So, things like Horson and things like Professor and Helvede and things like that, you have a lot of options at the top end. So things like Bincy, which are very conditional and things like that. Even things like Imk, for example, they just don't get a look in because there's better options. So yeah, I don't think it'll see much play, but I like that something's being done. Cutter Blackie having a provision change, really, really nice. This is the one that's deal 1 damage every time there's a crime, 2 if it's bonded. And I mean, there's a lot of potential with Mushy Truffle to generate plenty of these. Maybe that's a direction. I mean, it's a direction I'm going to look at because I think there's already kind of value there in line pockets. I mean, we know the line pocket packet is pretty good. So maybe Cutter Blackies and Horse and Senior are good enough to squeeze in the deck now. We'll have to see. Now Kalkstein, really like this change. Kalkstein 6 provisions from 7. So this is the profit 2, and you can spend 2 coins to purify. Absolutely amazing, to be honest. And I think honestly I probably would prefer this to something like Kurt, for example. In a lot of decks, obviously not in a bounty deck, you'd still want Kurt, but this now makes it you can kind of choose the direction when it goes. Kurt's a lot more flexible if you don't need to purify. Kalkstein is a lot more valuable as a sort of carryover thing. You compare it to something like Gremist, for example, where you have the potential to set up something where your opponent can't just spam out locks and things like that because you have a direct answer to it or it needs locking. Whereas Kurt is just that one time payoff for the purify. So I kind of like it. Kind of like our Kalkstein, to be honest. I was always partial to it myself. Witch Hunter Executioner, 4 power from 3, I think is fair. Bounty's playable, it's just not amazing. And the Witch Hunter Executioners were actually some of the standout cards because they're really solid spenders, being able to just deal with bounty units. But I think the power increase is fair. I think the power increase is fair. Maybe it'll help the deck do a little bit better. So we'll see. Skellige hasn't been touched too hard this patch, to be honest. Obviously, Fukushi's had a power drop. I think no one's surprised to see a change to Fukushi. Still a really solid card. I mean, in all honesty, I would probably still play this if it was like 1 power. So I'm not going to complain about that one. Wild Boar getting a power increase. Fair enough. Card's kind of dropped out. Similar to what I was saying about Syndicate, there's just better top end Skellige stuff. Skellige just absolutely overloaded with top end stuff you can use. I don't think Wild Boar cuts it because why would you run this instead of like a Morkvarg or a Hjalmar or a Tigvi or a Svalbard Turtom or even a Hemdall? I'd rather have a Hemdall than a Wild Boar of the Sea, to be honest. So here we are. And Primal Savagery, probably a card you wouldn't have seen all that much on ladder. It's the damage a unit by 2. If it gets the death blow, it spawns a Bear Abomination. So it ambitiously, with the death blow, plays for 8, which is pretty good at 4 provision. But it's ambitiously, it can play for 2. It's got a very large variance of 2/8. Still don't think it's going to see play there. Not really going to see that. And Scoia'tael's not really been touched that much, to be honest. Brigade getting a power increase, fair enough. Fair enough. Not the end of the world. This is the bonded one that deals 2 damage or boost by 2. It was already getting played in like any deck that was running Feign Death anyway, so maybe it's a good change for him. War Dancer, so this is the one where if it's already boosted, it damages the unit by 3, and I think it's 1 if it's not. I mean, I think these now just go into Invigorate. Some people run them, some people wear. I think it straight away goes in now. Salve, I agree on that. I'm not going to pronounce that. For 7 for 9. 7 from 9, sorry. Can't even speak. Still kind of expensive for what he's doing, in all honesty. We've kind of seen that it's not that great. Like bringing back from the graveyard things all well and good, but what would you replace? What would you replace in a spell Scoia'tael deck to fit in Salve? Are you going to remove your Dunker? Are you going to remove? You going to remove your Gord? I don't think you are. So I don't think it's going to see any play, to be honest. And Talk getting a power boost, fair enough. We kind of saw a lot of people tried hand buff, and then we very quickly realised that hand buff is straight garbage still. Even Talk isn't enough to save it. And I don't think the one power change is going to be enough, but something's being done, I guess. And Mushy Truffle getting a provision increase. We've kind of seen the cards used in nearly every deck. So completely fine with that. The card is very, very good. At 10 provisions, still very good. So that's about it. There's nothing earth-shattering in terms of changes. This patch it's a very standard one, where there's been some slight tweaks. But you know, there's definitely things to think about. Main ones being like Crossbowman's got me thinking about Imperial Formation, and Death Wish changes sound pretty nice, and get Kalkstein into Syndicate. Gotta do that. So I know I've basically talked for like 20 minutes. If you got this far, really appreciated, and we'll be back with a 6 faction 6 decks when the new patch hits. Gonna go and work on some of those now. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later.